It's unsettling how some people got so used to ignoring compassion. This is my rant. My family and I was shopping at a store. There was a very polite gentleman that was working hard at the register helping an old woman. He even went out of his way to carry her groceries to her car. The old woman, instead of saying thank you, just decided to not thank him, but just responded with, "You people should go back to your country." She didn't realize that he was a United States service member that was working part-time, so his wife would be financially secure before he was deployed. As a gentleman, he just simply responded, "Have a nice day," followed by a friendly wave. Most people are ignorant to facts and laws. Americans lie at least once a day and believe they get away with it most of the time. In a study, which asked Americans to estimate how many times they lie, the average answer was once or twice a day. What's really interesting is that another study revealed that Americans also think that they get away with lying 56% of the time. This audacity about falsehoods could be related to the fact that the US is dominated by Protestants. The same study found that Protestants believed they could get away with lying 55% of the time, while Muslims believed their lies would succeed only 47% of the time. Once you think about it, this makes perfect sense. Humans had to cooperate early in their evolution in order to survive. But what's one really great way to secure other people's cooperation? As anybody who has ever watched Survivor knows, it's by deceiving other people about what your real intentions are. As the authors of a study published earlier this year in the Proceedings of the Royal Society put it, tactical deception, the misrepresentation of the state of the world to another individual, may allow cheaters to exploit conditional cooperation by tactically misrepresenting their past actions and or current intentions. Lies are one pillar of our greatest altruistic creation as a species, cooperation. 2-year-olds can deliberately lie. Are children too innocent to make things up just to mess with you or get what they want? Nope. Humans develop the ability to lie soon after they learn to walk. Politicians have been liars since the dawn of Western civilization. In the West, we often think of ancient Greece as the forerunner to contemporary democracies. And as far back as the 400s BCE, there is ample evidence that politicians were liars. One of the most famous examples comes in the career of the politician Alcibiades, who was famous for defecting to whatever side was winning in the Peloponnesian War. An Athenian pro-war politician and strategist, he defected to Sparta, where he also pushed for war. Then he defected back to Athens again, when things went bad in Sparta. His favorite political tactic was deception. Also, if you're a person that claimed they are children of a certain god or higher form of a belief, doesn't give you a permission to abuse your freedom of speech to tell someone to go back to their country, a god will not justify a lie or acts of untruthfulness. Laws are the only reason why most families are safe. Without laws, this world will be live in utterly chaos. Even most gods have to set laws and commands for the sake of harsh judgment, unless your god is a god of destruction, hate, and war. But most gods are fictional and have no real ruling over most nations and cannot stand up in a court of laws. Having faiths and beliefs are okay, but having a belief that is hurting or condemning people for being different. Most gods that people claim wouldn't agree to acts of terrorism, but of course, people are known for confusion, such as the meaning of God compared to divine creation. Any way you see it, there are laws. And in the debate of who belongs where, the history of immigration to the United States details the movement of people to the United States, starting with the first European settlements from around 1600. Beginning around this time, British and other Europeans settled primarily on the East Coast. In 1619, Africans began being imported as slaves. The United States experienced successive waves of immigration, particularly from Europe. Immigrants sometimes paid the cost of transoceanic transportation by becoming indentured servants after their arrival in the New World. Later, immigration rules became more restrictive. The ending of numerical restrictions occurred in 1965. Recently, cheap air travel has increased immigration from Asia and Latin America. 6th century, Irish monks. This theory is actually more of a legend. A 6th century Irish monk named Saint Brendan supposedly sailed to North America on a currach, a wood-framed boat covered with animal skin. His alleged journey is detailed in the ancient annals of Ireland. Brendan was a real historical figure who traveled extensively in Europe. But there is no evidence that he ever made landfall in North America. In 1976, writer Tom Severin set out to prove that such a journey was possible. Severin built the Brendan, an exact replica of a 6th century currach, and sailed along a route described by the traveling monks. He eventually landed in Canada 10th century. The Vikings. The Vikings' early expeditions to North America are well documented and accepted as historical fact by most scholars. Around the year 1000 AD, the Viking explorer Leif Erikson, son of Eric the Red, sailed to a place he called Vinland, in what is now the Canadian province of Newfoundland. Erikson and his crew didn't stay along only a few years before returning to Greenland. Relations with native North Americans were described as hostile. This much had long been known from the Icelandic sagas. But until 1960, there was no proof of Eriksson's American sojourns. That year, Norwegian explorer Helge Ingstad and his wife, archaeologist Anne Stein Ingstad, unearthed an ancient Norse settlement. During the next 7 years, the Ingstads and an international team of archaeologists exposed the foundations of 8 separate buildings. In 1969, Congress designated October 9th as Leif Erikson Day, 15th century. The Chinese. This theory is espoused by a small group of scholars and amateur historians led by Gavin Menzies, a retired British naval officer. It asserts that a Muslim Chinese eunuch mariner from the Ming dynasty discovered America 71 years before Columbus. Zheng He was a real historical figure who commanded a huge armada of wooden sailing vessels in the early 15th century. He explored Southeast Asia, India and the east coast of Africa using navigational techniques that were, at the time, cutting edge. But Menzies, in his best-selling 2003 book, 1421, The Year China Discovered America, asserts that Zheng He sailed to the east coast of the United States and may have established settlements in South America. Menzies based his theory on evidence from old shipwrecks, Chinese and European maps, and accounts written by navigators of the time. Menzies' scholarship, though, has been called into question. Many of his claims are presented without a shred of proof, says historian Robert Finlay, writing in the Journal of World History. Indeed, most historians say the China First theory is full of holes. But of course, the ancestors of living Native Americans arrived in what is now the United States at least 15,000 years ago, possibly much earlier, from Asia via Beringia. The truth and fact is that the United States is a federal republic in which the president, Congress and federal courts share powers reserved to the national government, according to its constitution. The federal government shares sovereignty with the state governments. And by law, if the United States government has claimed you or any items as United States property, they by law to upholding order has every legal right to see us fit to uphold the very constitutional values we hold: landscapes, borders, and properties. And truthfully, if you don't want to be seen a United States property, there is an option of other countries you can go to. The irony is the very kindness and compassionate choices you have shown to our so-called immigrants will be applying to your new situation. The senses of actions will be seen as karma.